Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NeuroAlchemy, where science meets soul and where healing is understood as a nonlinear, multidimensional journey. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Young. Here on NeuroAlchemy, we slow conversations down on purpose. We define our terms clearly, we name complexity without overwhelming, and we approach healing as a multidimensional, nonlinear process that honors both the brain and the lived human experience, because clarity creates safety, and safety opens the door to deeper insight, choice, and healing. Today's conversation centers on nervous system regulation, creativity, self-trust, and what it means to heal in spirals rather than straight lines. As always, you're invited to listen gently. Please pause when you need to. Nothing here is about force or perfection. Take a breath. You don't need to fix anything today, just arrive. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Day. Jennifer's work bridges somatic awareness, trauma-informed healing, and embodied creativity. She developed a drawing-based practice called LifeLines to help people safely reconnect with their bodies, intuition, and inner coherence after periods of overwhelm or disorientation. Her approach grew from her own lived healing journey, where regulation, imagination, and symbolic integration proved more transformative than linear self-improvement. And what I appreciate about Jennifer's work is that it honors healing as layered, humane, and paced by the nervous system rather than the mind. Jennifer, we're really grateful that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I am so excited to be here and have this beautiful conversation.
Before we dive in, I always like to begin gently with an arrival check-in. How are you arriving today, either physically, emotionally, energetically, or otherwise?
Found myself today to be a little bit topsy-turvy, which I think is understandable given the astrology and the energy of what's happening in our collective today. I'm just observing it. My message this week is that we just are here to observe at the moment. We are in Gene Key 55, which is an astromancy program. And the animal totem I have given to this in my Sacred Wild Oracle deck is the butterfly, because we are in this process of the chrysalis at the moment. So we're goo. We're not ready to fly off yet. And so there's so much information in our transformational times in that goo. So that's where I am today.
I love that. And that just speaks to the very essence of what neuroalchemy is all about, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. That's exactly why I love to ask people that question at the beginning, because you just offered so much depth into who you are and what you do. And to all of you out there, remember that there's no right way to arrive here. However, you are showing up today is enough. Before we go further, I'd love to help orient our listeners with a few shared definitions. Jennifer, I'm going to invite you to define some ideas in everyday human language. Let's start here. When you say nonlinear healing, what does that mean in lived experience?
When I had my dark night of the soul, I was processing 24/7, and linear healing to me, the way I had understood it before I had to really anchor into it, the way one was supposed to heal was to go to therapy and to process with a therapist and speak it out loud and then follow their prompts and be emotionally regulated and watch some of these things. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And I realized that I needed some systems, some anchors, some might call them rituals, to get me through the minute by minute struggle of really taking accountability for my part in where I found myself, and also realizing and learning and having the courage to look at the lessons that were available to me through my experience. And I had to really get down and dirty about how this could very well happened for me instead of to me. And that meant really being present for the storm that was within, and the linear healing of going and speaking about things that scared me so much. Those were blocks. I found myself not courageous enough to really tell the truth out loud. Telling the truth can be scary. if you have not told it to yourself first.
And for listeners who want to name something, nonlinear doesn't mean broken, right? It means the body heals in layers. Jennifer, how do you define somatic awareness for someone who's never intentionally worked with their body?
I think that as a culture and as humanity has been for this last 100 years, we have been conditioned to live with outside recognition of value. So as a kid, we were looking at our parents. Is this right? Am I a good girl? As a student, our teachers were the ones that instilled those rules. And we were looking for, did I fill out this test correctly? Did I give this information appropriately? And then with partners and with our jobs, everything was externally focused. And so when I think of somatic healing, it's getting out of our heads and out of the air around us and looking outside of us for that validation and being able to feel about how we feel in our bodies. Our bodies are our greatest gift. And one of our greatest gifts is that we get to feel emotions. And our life experience often has taught us that feeling emotions is not welcome. Big emotions are not to be felt, certainly not shared. And that has been one of the biggest, I think, motivations for us to step outside of our bodies and stay in our heads. Figure it out, cure it, fix it. We don't have much patience or bandwidth for being in discomfort. And that's one of the things that somatic awareness helps us with, that emotions are not meant to be feared. Emotions are not facts. They are here to teach us something, to show us something. And if we can feel them, they will relax and step away. They will allow us to learn something from them, and they might come back, but they're not going to maybe knock us out of our stratosphere, if you will. I was really afraid that my feelings would just take me out. So I had to step into that from a very sort of a spiral style, strategy.
When you talk about nervous system regulation, how would you explain that simply?
Your nervous system is almost like the weather pattern that is happening within your body. And I like to explain it the way someone explained to me about one of my kiddos who had some sensory issues. I think we all have sensory issues, by the way. I don't think that is anything that, they have, but we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
But, say you wake up in the morning and you walk downstairs, and as you're setting up your cup of coffee, your hand gently nudges the cup and it almost falls off the counter. And you go, and you capture it and you're like, whew, thank gosh that didn't fall over. And you're imagining the mess that you might have had to clean up had it happened. And then a few minutes later, you step over your cat and it gets up and runs across the room and you almost trip and you go, each of these startles puts water in your cup. If you think of your body as a cup, each of these startles or shocks adds more volume. And as you're almost late to work, or you get stuck behind a train, or you walk in and you realize you forgot a piece of paper on your desk or something, each of these things adds water. And if we are not mindfully taking care of that cup, of that volume of water, and we don't have practices that help us release some of that pressure, then one of these things that may not be huge will make our cup spill over. I like to also bring it back to when people throw out their backs and they're like, I don't know what happened. I just sneezed. That was the thing that made the cup run over. There were steps before that could have been taken regularly to manage the amount of stress that our bodies are carrying. We now know that our fascia carries an electrical current and that our fascia constricts with emotion, and that our fascia is where we store emotion. And there is so much gentle movement that we can do to release things. And studies show that 5 minutes of mindfulness is masterful at releasing stress. There are so many easy things that we can do. I think the term mindfulness is overused and it's a buzzword in today's society. And so people are like, oh my God, mindfulness. But what I needed to learn in my life was the small itty bitty steps that I could take to achieve that kind of awareness without sitting down for an hour and meditating and getting super deep. Like that was intimidating to me. So I learned all kinds of small ritualistic, and ritual just means habitual, right? With intention, these little steps that I could take throughout my day to honor my body and to let it communicate with me and start living from the neck down.
A little bit about ritual, I think sometimes people can have a negative understanding, a negative programming. We were talking about, programming and subconscious beliefs and all of those things, right? They might have a different reaction to that. But really, just to piggyback off of what you said, rituals are merely a set of actions that we choose to do to take us toward an intended result. And we have them with so many things in life. We all have a ritual when we get up in the morning. We all do it the same way every time, right? So I just want to say that because there's no reason to have any negative connotations around words, right? They're just words. It's the intention and the meaning and the charge that we put behind them that really is the communicator. And finally, what role does creativity or symbolic expression play in helping people feel safe again inside themselves?
So, you mentioned in the opening that we were going to talk about self trust. And I believe that self trust and self esteem and self confidence and authenticity all live in the same bowl, if you will. And creativity is a way for us to explore what's going on in our imaginations, which is another beautiful gift that we have in this life experience that we're having. When we can anchor into our creativity and just draw something, doodle or do my program LifeLines or do intuitive painting, it is process as opposed to product. I think most art classes when we were kids said, like, paint this thing. And then you were imagining that you were going to paint something that was so beautiful that your parents might put it on their wall or that it had a home to live out to be exposed. And the work that I do with creativity is more what is happening? How are you talking to yourself as you're working on a piece of paper? What are these voices that you hear that become your self critics, obviously our inner critics, but also our self censorship? Those are all the voices of all of those mentors, parents, teachers who are telling you in moments of piercing, like when my mom, said things like, gosh, I'm an artist, but I don't know where you came from. I mean, things like that. Those are piercing comments and they become the voices that we hear as we're navigating our worlds. And in order to begin working with those and to recognize what is your voice and what were you told, who were you before you were told who you were supposed to be, we get to invite opportunity to be in conversation with those voices. And we can't start shifting those voices and deciding what we wish to accept and what we wish to release if we are not having an organized time to get acquainted with those voices. So when you pick up a piece of paper, a pen and a piece of paper, and you start doodling, just doodle. How long has it been since any of us have given ourselves permission to just create? And right now we have such a beautiful opportunity to dream into our future. What do we want in our future? What is our future self trying to communicate with our current self? And how can we behave today in our current self so that our future self is in alignment, that we can reach those goals? I have wrestled with dedicating time to just read outside in the sunlight or to sit down and doodle or to go for a walk rather than do more, create more, or whatever it might be. And creativity looks like giving yourself open time to just be. And that's a check in point. I have friends who cook. I have friends that hike. I have friends that paint. I have friends that draw. I have friends that knit, etc. There are so many ways that we can be creative that do not require artistic talent or artistic training or training of any kind.
I'd love to turn toward your story. Can you share what your own period of overwhelm or disorientation was like and how creativity and regulation became part of your healing?
I came from a family where my father had uncontrolled rage. And then I married my first husband, and he had the same problem. And the lesson within was pretty profound, but it meant that I had to find that I was only responsible for me, and I did not have to accept being treated in that way. But my self value, I had to find the value in myself in order to step out of that cycle. And I had two kids and they were born into that cycle. And so how do I manage their healing and what is my responsibility to heal them at all? How do we move forward? How can I make myself the healthiest version of myself so that I can open the pathway for them to find their way to healing? And before I left my first husband, I was a Spanish teacher to elementary and middle school for 30 years, just about. And I had been invited in 2023 to travel to Peru and translate for a group of Americans who were studying to be Incan shaman. So they had had a lot of study, and I just walked in. It had been on my wish list to learn more about the cosmology, but I had not had that opportunity before. So when I was in Peru, through the connection with Mother Earth and the introduction of ritual as we speak, this was introduced to me that we have so much to be grateful for, which of course we've all heard a million times, how, be grateful for everything. But the shaman, the Pacos in Peru taught me that gratitude can be in the tiny things. Before you pick up your first cup of coffee in the morning, you can say, thank you so much for this coffee, Mother Earth. Before you drink your water, gosh, water is in abundance. Thank you for this water. Or before you pet your dog, thank you for being here. I love my dogs. They're currently snoring right next to me if you can hear them. And that, it was like every day there was a little nugget that I was able to pick up. And 10 days later, when I left, having been initiated in a glacial lake at the top of Umantai, I realized that I had found my way into my quiet center in a way that years of practicing meditation and doing other mindfulness techniques to try to emotionally regulate hadn't worked. Years later, when I left my first husband, life just sort of fell to the ground as large life transitions often cause. And I was really lost and I was really scared. I was frightened about who I was without all of the cloaks that I had been wearing, wife, mother, daughter, all of these things that all of a sudden I had to redefine. And the way I found my way out was finding everything that I could be grateful for in the minute to get through this hour, to feel safe in the now. And I realized through that process that my safety is my responsibility. So my relationship with myself is my biggest responsibility and my biggest gift. And I started realizing how my life experience had taught me to be very aware of other people's energy and very empathetic and all of the cloaks that we take on. And I realized that my energetic sensitivity, my empath perspective, if you will, is one of my superpowers. But there's a difference between being an empath and empathing as a verb and taking on the responsibility for other people's happiness and their emotional regulation as my job. And what an incredible gift just that understanding was.
Did you find yourself doing that naturally from a young age?
Being an
Empathing,
empath? Yes, an
empathing with
empathing
everyone.
with everyone. And I used to almost brag about it and be like, man, I can walk into a party and if there are 500 people and two people in the back are having an argument, I know that they're having an argument. I can feel that dissension and, whatever. And now that I look at that, I'm like, but 498 people were happy. So why would I want my compass to switch over to the two that were unhappy? And why would my frequency be affected by those two people and not by the 488 people who were happy? And I realized that I had a choice for how I wanted to be energetically communicating with the world, with myself, with the environment. And one of the other things that the shamanic path has given me is a really clear idea of being an animist. And what that means is believing that everything is alive and that there is a vibration to everything. So many antique cultures believe that rocks have a vibration. We know that they have a composition and a vibration now that we are more in quantum world of science. But thinking that the trees have a soul, thinking that the mountains are watching over us, that they are pillars of wisdom that are holding our backs, standing behind us, has offered me such calm. And I found when I was really devastated that animal totems out in nature that I've just been mentioning, I could borrow their strength
Wow.
or their archetypal energy when I couldn't find it in myself. So if I needed courage, I would identify with a jaguar and I'm going to walk with jaguar today. And when I needed courage, when I needed to know that I needed power from my hibernation, I took on the bear. When I needed wisdom, I took on the owl. And these are just stories I told myself, right? But they were ways that I could anchor in and borrow other strength so that I could move forward feeling supported.
So often we try to think our way back to safety, but your story shows how the body leads the way. Many listeners feel frustrated when healing doesn't feel linear. From your perspective, why does the nervous system heal in spirals instead of straight lines?
So straight lines are directional. So if we think of our life as a map, we were trained. Like if I want to become a dentist, I have to go in this direction. Or if I want to go be a lawyer, I need to take these steps to get there. And healing, like we're already healed. I like to offer, as many people do these days, to offer that we're not actually healing, we're holing. We are inviting all of those pieces to come home. All paths lead back to ourselves. And so, the woman who is a survivor of domestic violence, the woman who is the woman who went through all of that divorce and struggled with all of those things, she is still here. Healing her does not mean that she goes away. Healing her means I get to invite her in and have a relationship with her and ultimately feel such incredible compassion for myself as I'm walking through the world and like, oh my God, look what I've survived. And look
Hmm.
what I created on the other side of that. And what a beautiful thing that I was so courageous to walk through that threshold. And each of us have thresholds to walk through in this life that have to do with personal things as well as professional and out there in the world, but our personal thresholds are beautiful portals and can be really transformational in every area of our lives if we're courageous enough to take them up on the offer.
How do you help people soften toward that process rather than fight it?
Community, that is so important because when we are in our own heads, processing the same things and telling ourselves the same stories that we have always told ourselves, we are in an echo chamber.
Mm.
We have little opportunity to be offered new possibility or new perspectives and new insights into ourselves that are reflections from people within our community. That means online communities as much as it means within your own town or city. I think that finding a community that is uplifting and where you are recognized as being a fellow traveler on this journey through our own personal struggles. Mine may look different than yours, but together we can support one another and walk forward holding hands. It's like me pulling on the bear and the trees when I was trying to move forward. I now have many people that I have gathered and been so lucky enough to attract that I have people that I can anchor into as well as the animal totems and the totems from nature.
And I want to name this also. Returning to something doesn't mean you've failed. It means your system is integrating. Jen, what happened or what helps people stay compassionate with themselves during those cycles?
Our connection to the versions of us that are inside is something that I have really struggled with myself, anchoring into my inner child or finding compassion for the version of me that made XYZ decision that hurt ABC person. Those have been challenging for me from time to time. And when I sit down and do my LifeLines process, I am telling a story and anchoring myself on the page and drawing in the flow of frequency and the release of shame that I am asking for. And scientists have studied this in Russia. It's not necessarily something that's studied here, but the process of neurographica, and I'm certified with a few of them because I love so many different perspectives. For a minute there, I was a certification collector as validation, but I love all the tools that I have. They have studied the process when you do neuro art, which is what most people would know it as. And it puts us into theta. It slows down the brain and the body and allows us to get in, just to slow everything down, as you said at the beginning of the show. I think everything in our lives moves so fast these days. We're always rush, 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 go, go, go,
Mhm.
hurry up, hurry up. And the this process of neuro art that I was so fortunate enough to learn can be done on a post-it note or on a used envelope. It can be used in the pickup line at carpool or waiting for the next teller at the post office. It's something that is simple and just helps slow you down. I did it for hours a day at the beginning, and those doodles are all over my office. They're on my art, these lines that you see in the art behind me. Those are versions of it as well. It has it's been such a physical representation of the work that I'm doing inside, and as above so below, or as within so without. These are super old sayings that are not necessarily witchy, if you will, to go back to the ritual comment. It is a representation, again, a totem, a physical representation, or a way that I can relate and say, this is what I'm calling in. This is what I'm asking for. I'm trying to untangle the threads of whatever it is that I'm working on and allow flow to come so that I can move through this, not eject out of it.
Also, Jen, for me and for the space that we're in, I have an appreciation for every spiritual path out there. Paganism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Christianity, you name it. I have a love and appreciation for all of those. So my comment earlier actually wasn't about like saying anything was good or bad. It was more because I think last week I came upon we do those little journaling things sometimes where we have a nice thought, where we think about something. We're like, wow, I should really write that down. And it was sitting out. I don't know when I wrote it actually, but it was sitting out on the bed. And my partner, he said, is this for me? Did you want me to read this? And I looked at it and it said rituals on the top of it. And I was like, no, but I picked it up and I was reading it, and it was exactly what we were just talking about. How, what is a ritual really if you strip it down and you really think about like what is that? And it is something that we all do. You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you do when you go to work, there's rituals there, right? It's just like in some places there's like a whole other meaning for that, which that's fine too. My sister's pagan and she has rituals, and those rituals mean something very different. And, I have family that they're Hindu and their rituals are different but anyway, you integrate, go ahead. Yeah,
I just wanted to say anything that we tend to do routinely is a
is a
ritual.
ritual.
The way I make my coffee in the morning, my husband
Is a
knows, like, if
ritual.
I don't have my honey and I don't have my little magic duster with the coriander and all the stuff, or yeah, it will mess up my whole day. And it's because it's a ritual. It's a way that I set my coffee in a way that I know that I will enjoy it. I will love it. It will feed me. It will nourish me. And so a ritual means that you're doing it with intention. Habit means you're doing it blindly and just sort of subconsciously. Ritual means there's an intention behind it and you're recognizing and you can offer some gratitude towards it. And you can say, God, I'm so lucky to have this coffee and have all my things to make this the most delicious coffee to start my day with.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that. That's always an opening, right? So we can
Mhm.
use those things that we do all the time and we compare them up with that gratitude. We compare them up with that loving, with that appreciation. And it makes it easier to integrate new ways of being in the world, new ways that we want to grow, pairing them up with those rituals, routines, things that we normally do, make them easier to integrate. And you integrate drawing and symbolic expression into healing. What happens neurologically and emotionally when people engage creativity in this way?
It starts the conversation with you and your capital S self. So if we talk about how everyone's like, be your authentic self and shine your light, you're here to shine your unique light. We have so many hints at the end result without many steps for how to actually get there. So again, there's that linear thing. There are actually steps that you can do to get there, but we travel them in a cyclical spiralic path. So when we step into creativity, when our monkey mind sort of steps to the side and we allow the other subconscious or unconscious part of our brains and judgment center to step forward, that's magic. That is just magical when we can hear, wow, I didn't realize I was worried about the Olympics or whatever that might come up. I didn't realize that I was ignoring, because our monkey minds help us avoid deeper meaning and deeper information. There's so much juice there. It's like if you're eating soup and you stick your spoon deep down in there and you lift it up and you're like, oh my God, there's 5 different types of beans in here. You don't see that if you're just racing across the top of your soup. If you're not,
Mhm.
it takes intention to become aware of the depths of our soul and our mind. I think that intention, to go back to what we were just talking about with the coffee, when we are setting intention, we are slowing the process of that habit down and recognizing the pieces of it that we can show appreciation for. It's the same thing with creativity. When we slow ourselves down and we give ourselves the privilege of releasing responsibility and stepping into what feeds our soul, whether that be creativity or cooking or hiking or drawing or whatever the things that I mentioned before, it's like a beautiful well that will just continue to bring up things for you that you had no idea were even going on in this body as we're running around the world.
Why does imagination matter for recovery?
I have a saying that we are the artists of our life. And if at my lowest point, I had not found a way to dream into what it was that I actually wanted, that was in direct opposition to where I was, if I hadn't had the imagination to dream into that, I wouldn't have manifested it. I wouldn't have produced it. I wouldn't, if we believe that everything is energy and we are stuck in a negative loop of energy and we cannot imagine an energetic frequency that's just out there and we cannot imagine that that's where I want to go, then how can you ever get there? I think it's incredibly important for 2026 in my community. I already mentioned the gene keys. I write a lot that using a lot of different systems, human design, gene keys, lots of astromancy systems through a shamanic lens. And this year in particular, as we're watching so much chaos outside of us, globally, nationally, wherever anybody happens to be listening, there's something happening that's pretty dramatic. Using our imagination and our creativity to find a way to regulate our nervous systems, there's that word again, just to calm it down and slow it down for a period of time, whether that be 10 minutes or an hour. That is that's the magic sauce to being able to find peace as we navigate this world. And within my community, I talk about the axis of belonging. Like, how do we stand today? What is the natural process for our energetic system so that we can be in a place of responding, rather than reactivity? And if to go back to what I said at the beginning, if our cups are running over because we have just not managed all of the stuff that is thrown into our cups at work, with paperwork, with bills, with money, with government, with all of these things, then we're just going to be running around splashing our water on everybody else, particularly our families and the ones that we love the most, we hurt the most. So, how do we stop this cycle of injury? We do it by taking care of the amount of water that we are carrying. A pithy comment that has always been used is put on your oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen masks of your kids. This is the oxygen mask. There are certain ways throughout our imagination and creativity and the ritual of your life that can help you do that moment by moment. It's not once a day, but they can be done at the stoplight on the way to work. They can be done in the moment that you are watching your kid walk to your car and appreciating that moment rather than planning the 4 different ways that you can avoid traffic to get to soccer practice.
And what do you notice shifts first when someone begins creating from inside safety?
When we are inside safety, you can see, I'll say from a leader perspective, when I'm running an art medicine studio or I'm working within my community of Kaleidosol and Life Shine Design, when I can create a space that is safe, people's bodies relax. You'll see them literally get smaller in their chair on the screen because they're relaxing. Their stance of being prepared and like braced and ready for whatever's coming, that releases. And that's something that's so beautiful. And that within each container that I participate or that I'm leading or what have you, trying to help people notice how they can do that for themselves, that's the magic. I'm no guru. The time of guru is over, I think, for 2026 and beyond. But there are things that I have learned that can really help somebody else. So teaching these skills and talking about this on a regular basis gives me so much joy because I see the positive effects of it in every gathering. And it's lovely.
Absolutely. So many sensitive, thoughtful adults lose trust in themselves after burnout or trauma. From your experience, what does rebuilding self trust actually look like in the body?
It's noticing. Our lives are really, if we are spending our time wisely for ourselves, we are just noticing what is happening. Burnout is so common because we have been trained to accommodate and make happy everyone outside of us at the expense of our own happiness and our own energy systems. Excuse me. Human design and Gene Keys has information about the individual that can help us learn what our natural energy is like. I also use the Enneagram as part of my system when I work with clients because the Enneagram are the behaviors and ways that we kept ourselves safe and secure as an adaptation. And so I identify as a number 5. And in the Enneagrammic idea, that means that I wake up with a certain amount of energy every day. And so I have to be aware that that energy is going to expire at some period during the day. So how do I preserve that energy? And when I read that the first time, I was like, that's why. When I have a party at night, I try to not have anything scheduled because I will not
Mm.
have any energy to go to the party. And that's why I know I'm going to need some time the next day to reboot. Did I need to get that reflection back at me to take care of myself during moments? No, I was already doing the things that I needed to do to preserve my energy. However, now that I know that that's my go-to, that's my deflection, I can sort of see like why. Why do I think that going to parties removes my energy? And is there a way that I can step forward that where there can be like a reciprocity where I can offer my energy and I can also receive? And many of us who have grown up with big T or little t traumas or difficult situations, we give our energy, but it's not safe to receive. Learning to receive is really hard and really scary. I do think that when we are in conversation with our inner world, when we are listening and noticing to what's happening within ourselves, even for 5 minutes a day, that is improvement. When we're burned out for 100 reasons. So listen to how you can fill your cup. What does that look like right now? Does it look like you go sit out in your car and you take a nap for 10 minutes during lunch? Does it look like you need to make a change in what you're eating at night for dinner? How late you're eating? Does it mean you just need to show gratitude for all of the good things that you do have because all of the negative things can be so loud?
What helps people return to coherence without forcing themselves forward?
One of the most important questions that we can ask ourselves, and we can ask ourselves this question every minute of every day, is what serves me? And that feels so selfish in our culture because we've been taught to take care of everybody else. We've been conditioned as mothers, as daughters, as, put on any other role because this applies to all, that we have to do for others before we do for ourselves. And by the end of the day, we don't have any energy for ourselves because we've given it all away. So allowing yourself to take up space, allowing yourself to have a say in how you are acting in your daily life. I'm a certified life coach, and it was so interesting when I went through that certification because they talked about how often so often women, but I don't doubt that this crosses the gender barrier and is all ages, when the simple question of what would you like for dinner comes up, so many of us are like, I don't care. Where do you want to go to dinner? What kind of food are you looking for? I don't care. I still really don't care about food that much, but I did have to really think about, like, how long has it been since I've actually declared, I want a steak or I want Chinese food, whatever it might be. Just declaring what I wanted was scary. And also, I was like, do I really want that? It had been so long since I had listened that I actually didn't even know the truth of the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of what we do in my practice is noticing those little ways that our inner people, if you will, our inner selves are communicating. And just noticing is the first step to authenticity, to self trust, to greater intuition. All of that comes in the same package. It has to start with the tiny little micro opportunities we give ourselves to trust ourselves and just the what if. What if I am a really intuitive person? What if I am energetically connected and I already know the answer and the way forward? What if? If that were true, what would this look like? What if I could have the intuition or the wisdom of an owl? What would that look like through my day? Just, it's so fun to play with. And when we can turn it into play, it doesn't mean it's less impactful, but it does mean maybe the knife edge isn't so sharp.
And I think it's also important to say, self trust isn't rebuilt through pressure, it's rebuilt through permission. You speak about embodied leadership and pacing. What do safety, presence, and gentleness matter so much, especially for sensitive nervous systems?
When you have a sensitive nervous system, and I think 99% of us have a sensitive nervous system, it's whether or not we can hear it communicating with us that makes the difference. The reason that that's so important right now is that you are the artist of your life. You are the boss of your life, every single one of us individually. And so teaching our kids that they are the boss of their lives is a beautiful thing that I think every parent would say they would want to offer. But if we're not living it, they don't know how. So I think that as we step into leadership, if there is such a thing, if there is a collective shift that can happen, each of us has to do our own work first. I've been saying for over a year, so I feel like I'm just repeating myself ad nauseum, and I hope that people aren't tired of the message. But that message is that the most important job that we have to do right now is to anchor into our own energy. It's just because anything else, when we walk out into the world and we interact in any way,
It's
we are,
foundational.
yes, it's foundational because everything else is on top of that. And I think it's obvious to all of us that when you walk out into public, Everyone is running around reacting and spewing all of their craziness all over everybody else because they're not doing the individual work. So there's a question that everybody gets to ask themselves at this time. And that is, how do you wish to stand in the world? I have a class that's coming up next month that's called the Sacred Stance. And it relates back to that axis of belonging that I was talking about, because the way we choose to stand and the posture that we take is not about what we do, it's how we respond. What is the energetic frequency that you are holding in your space, in your life, in this moment? That's a big question.
How does honoring pace change the healing trajectory?
When we honor pace, we're honoring our body. When we are reacting and chasing the dream and chasing the deadlines and all of that, that's outside of our bodies. And there is a way that you can blend the two. A lot of people with human design will say, well, I can teach you how to change your energy and the way you spend your energy in your life, and it will make all the difference. And yes, that's true. There will be a difference because your understanding will shift. But that doesn't mean that you can really change how you show up in the world in many cases. Again, it's awareness and being aware of what's happening within and taking the time to listen to your own body before you step out into space. Pacing is everything.
And awareness, everything begins with awareness. We always like to end these conversations with what we call a micro practice invitation. So it's not a big protocol, but just a small embodied practice that our listeners can explore throughout each day over the next week. Jen, what gentle micro practice would you offer?
Checking in with the body in a really non judgmental way, multiple times a day, is such a valuable practice. And the way I do that is I put my hand on my heart and I just ask myself, how are you feeling in this moment? Not today, like right now, what's happening? And often today, in this society that we're living in with these things that are happening, it's overwhelmed, a little shocked, stunned, whatever the answer that comes up. I tell myself, it's entirely appropriate that I feel this way. And I will not feel this way forever. And I just take a breath and give myself permission to feel that without fixing it. So often, like we get a headache and it's like instantly to the Advil or the Tylenol or whatever. There are emotions that are uncomfortable. Sometimes I put my hand on my heart and I ask myself how I feel. And I'm like, I feel pretty damn good. Like, wow, look at that. And it's perfectly appropriate that I feel that way. There is no wrong emotion. Emotions just are. So I love that check in. And I often, if we can talk about energy for a sec, when I am feeling swirly and my brain is racing, doing that activity and being aware of the bottoms of my feet. We have energetic centers on the bottoms of our feet. And when we send our energy there, even just thinking about it right now, the bottoms of my feet get warm. And so feeling that connection to Mother Earth through my feet, through my shoes, through the car, through whatever, wherever, brings me back down into my body. And those two things together can be really powerful. Where are my feet? Can I feel my toes? What do my feet heels feel like? What part of my feet are touching the ground? And then how am I feeling? It's a perfectly appropriate that I'm feeling that way. Big breath, just release. It's a beautiful practice.
Thank you. And that will be in our show notes, you guys, as well. As we begin to close, I'd love to ask you one more question. What do you most hope listeners remember about their own healing or inner wisdom after hearing our conversation today?
Healing does not require paying a gajillion dollars for all of the new systems that you have to put into place so that you don't make the same mistakes again or anything, or you don't have to go far to find it. Healing begins with noticing and just slowing things down. And if the invitation to slow down the way you make your cup of coffee in the morning or your tea or the way you approach your gentle workout in the morning to wake up your body, if you can slow those little things down, the rest of your day will open up for opportunity for you to slow yourself down. Healing is holing. It's not getting rid of something, it's allowing for everything to be just as it is and knowing that in the future, you can anchor into what will be. Our minds have tremendous power.
Jennifer, thank you for bringing your presence, depth, and humanity into this space today. For every listener navigating overwhelm, self doubt, or disconnection, may this conversation remind you that healing can be slow, trust can be relearned, and your body holds wisdom. Episode links and Jen's information are going to be available in the show notes. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to this episode. That's how these conversations travel. That's how the people who need to hear them get to hear them the most. Thank you for joining us on NeuroAlchemy. You are not broken. You are becoming. Bye for now.